Wow. We are now, this film was Charlie Chaplin's last film in Niles that he has starred in. And the way I always like to put it in, you know, some of you might remember an old commercial for Schlitz beer. And their motto was the beer that made Milwaukee famous. Well, what you're going to see now is what I like to say, the film that made Niles famous, the Tramp. And to tell you a lot more about the Tramp, here is Matias Bombal. Matias.
Thank you very much, Michael. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we haven't had an opportunity today to stop for a moment and thank the marvelous volunteers, the board that worked so hard, the projectionists, the musicians, and everyone involved with the Niles Film Museum that make Charlie Chaplin Days part of the heritage of this community for years now, and hopefully with your continued patronage, many years into the future. Let's give them a round of applause. It's always something fabulous to learn something new about something old, and I have some trepidation in talking about perhaps the most famous film to be made in this community when I'm surrounded by so many of my colleagues who are so erudite in the world of film and preservation. But I'll give it a go. For those of you that don't know me, by way of introduction, I'm a radio film critic syndicated across the United States on many stations, and I program the classic films that are shown the last Tuesday of each month at the Orinda Theater in Orinda, California. We have The Women with Joan Crawford coming up at the end of this month, and next month, The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T on the big screen. And I hope you'll join us. We very strategically plan those the last Tuesday afternoon of each month to no way affect your chances of attending every program here in Niles. So I hope that you will continue to do that, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that. This is a marvelous picture in many ways because we see the emerging Chaplin little fellow, and you'll see it in small touches, not fully developed, but certainly the beginnings of something that would become iconic and something special to so many of us celebrating this great festival here this weekend. Henry Ensign did a lot of photography on this picture. He would later become the head of the Paramount Studios Film Laboratory, but got a lot of lensing in before. Of course, let's look at the cast. Charlie's in the titular role as the Tramp, and Edna Purviance, as Michael mentioned earlier, who's going to play the farmer's daughter in this picture. Chaplin did keep her on the payroll for most of her life. There was a brief period when she married a Pan Am pilot in 1938. And so there was a gap in support from Chaplin during the time that they were married until he died in 1945, and then he continued to pay her until the end of her life. He reportedly said, "How could I forget Edna? She was with me when it all began." Billy Armstrong plays the minister in this film. He's got just a very brief sequence, but I like it in that he had worked with Fred Karno's touring troupe, as had Chaplin and also Stan Laurel. And so once he came to the U.S., he went straight to Chaplin for work, and this is his first major role in which he starred with Chaplin. And he continued with Chaplin until the end of the S&A contract, later went to Keystone, but died sadly just 33 years old of tuberculosis. Leo White, who you've seen a lot of this afternoon, who plays the first thief in The Tramp, often, of course, worked with Charlie. The last time they worked together was in The Great Dictator, but would you believe he made over 400 screen appearances? And I think what's really interesting is, and I've only come up with this hypothetical possibility during this afternoon, that he must be, in all of these S&A comedies, the man who has his silk top hat knocked off the most amount of times. No matter which part he's playing, with those wonderful mustaches and those exotic characters that he plays, often slightly foreign in appearance. The second thief, and playing a double role as later Edna's fiancé near the end of the picture, is Lloyd Bacon. And of course, he is probably a familiar name if you're real movie buffs, because he went on to direct many comedies over his career, and of course, after acting in them, many shorts, and then some major silent and sound features, mostly for First National and then a little bit later for Warner Brothers. For example, he made Brass Knuckles in 1927. This is directing. Women They Talk About in 1928. After Sound, The Singing Fool with Al Jolson in 1928. Stark Mad, which was a fun picture, in 1929. Moby Dick in 1930 with John Barrymore, which was a remake of the silent The Sea Beast. Sit Tight in 1931 with the winsome Winnie Leitner, who was a great comedian, and Joey Brown, and several pictures with a very young James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson at the start of his career. But likely his most famous movies would include, as director, 42nd Street, Footlight Parade, Cain and Mabel, The Gold Diggers of 1937, and ultimately concluding his career in 1954-53 in 3D with The French Line with Jane Russell. So from silent comedy opposite Chaplin to three-dimension, Lloyd Bacon had a fantastic career in Hollywood and has made memorable movies we still watch and enjoy today. I think Michael mentioned briefly earlier Bud Jameson, who was the heavy-set villain in most of these, was born in Vallejo, California, or as we call it locally, Vallejo. And he would appear in 450 movies before he died in 1945, including 38 shorts with the Three Stooges. Paddy McGuire was the farmhand. He was a wonderful Irish actor and comedian. He also an untimely death at 39 years of age. This movie was shot in just 10 days. As was mentioned earlier, it was the last of the 5 films that he made in the surrounding of Niles. It was his 6th film that he directed for S&A out of the 14 that he would make for the studio. Developing his little fellow, some of the examples I want to point out as you watch today you might find interesting. In the opening sequence, while he's dodging traffic on Niles Canyon Boulevard, or Niles Canyon Boulevard to be, you'll notice that he's knocked down several times, and then after the traffic goes away, he takes out a brush and he brushes himself off as if he's his own valet, indicating that perhaps he might have had an experience of refinement earlier in his life, and now he's downtrodden and in a hard luck circumstance. Again, you see this later when he sets down to have a little picnic, part of which is stolen, but he goes to the time to groom his nails before dining, suggesting really that he had a better life before. And this is the first film which you might think that a tragic ending was associated with Chaplin, with the discovery that there's a fiancé and not he who is the love interest of beautiful Edna. You'll also note he's quite dangerous with a pitchfork in this movie. This is something I found that was really interesting, and I can't verify it, but it seems legitimate. Stan Laurel recalled that Leo White told him of the making of the Tramp. He repeated some gags until the actors felt as if they did it one more time, they'd blow their corks. He said the business of the crooks going up and down the ladder was done so many times and in so many variations, they just couldn't tell what the hell all the fuss was about. That's what made Charlie a great creator of comedy. He knew that sometimes you had to do a thing 50 times in slightly different ways until you get the very best. Stan Laurel continued with the Leo White story. The difference between Charlie and all the rest of us who made comedy was that he absolutely refused to do anything but the best. To get the best, he worked harder than anyone I know. The cow milking scene you've seen is an example of a Chaplin idea that would come back in a later film. A similar moment appears in a dream sequence in Modern Times in 1936. And that heartbreaking note that he leaves Edna, I thought your kindness was love, but it ain't, 'cause I seen him. Goodbye. As he enters the film, he exits the film alone with that buck up and never say die attitude as his body transforms as he walks away from sadness to optimism. Now, we'll all enjoy The Tramp as released by the S&A Studios and distributed by the General Film Company November the 11th of 1915. Offered to you in image by Brett Ryan Bonowitz up in the projection room and on the screen for your laughing pleasure. I thank you.